You are listening to the Real Men Feel Show with Andy Grant. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's get into this week's show. Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant, and it is one of those rare, wonderful times where the call to arms has been sounded. The Real Men Feel horn has been horned. I don't have it near me. If you've heard me use it, you're probably glad I don't have it near me. But today we have the first panel of men since, I believe, January, when we got together to talk about the Gillette The Best Men Can Be campaign. And today what calls us together is an interview Pharrell did in GQ magazine about new masculinity. So we're going to gather, talk about that. And with me this evening, we have Al Fleming. Try and look at who's here. Matt Basco. And I'm assuming everyone, yeah, whatever. If you're watching, it's going left to right from what you're seeing. Anthony Simeone, Boysen Hodgson. And I'm going to unmute everybody. You're all unmuted. Say hello.
Hello.
Hey.
All right, cool. So I want to start with Al. Al, you read this article, brought it to my attention. You shared it in the Real Men Feel group. So my first question is, what about the article captured you, and why did you share it?
So, to be honest, when I first posted the question, I didn't read the article. But
well, I appreciate that honesty.
What captured my attention was it said the new masculinity issue. And of course, the picture I saw was the cover picture, a photograph of Pharrell in that sleeping bag gown or whatever that is. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's not my thing. But long story short, I thought new masculinity. I mean, so what's so new about it, right? You know, and what are they going to say that isn't possibly already happening, you know, in the world already? I feel like this magazine, or at least this article, I thought my impression was that it was going to be more of like an echo of what's already going on, as opposed to like being in the forefront to get something started. I believe I was sort of right about that, but I did find some interesting insights in Pharrell's article, but I found more interesting insights in the rest of the articles.
Oh, cool. So let's stick to the Pharrell interview at first, because that's what I know everybody's read that. And as I was telling Al before we got on the show, I went looking for GQ magazine. I couldn't find a copy. I don't know where the heck magazines are sold anymore these days, but they're not in my old stomping grounds anymore, which is like porn shops. So maybe that's why. But
that's a different conversation, Andy.
And
that's another show.
Yeah. And Boysen, I know you had an active Twitter feed going on I assume on the interview, but what was that about there?
Yeah, so it came to my attention through Remaking Manhood. Mark Green posted something about it in response to somebody else's, and I did a string of tweets on kind of undefining masculinity, which is, you know, the new masculinity thing. I wrote The New Macho in 2010, the poem that has been republished, based on articles from Newsweek in 2009. And there was a New Macho issue of Newsweek magazine where they did like this whole kind of expose and who's the new macho and what does that look like and all of these things. And the conversation just kind of gets recycled every once in a while. It pops up and then the trolls beat it back down and then it pops up again. But every time it gets a little bit, it's a little more evolved, I think. I think some of the things that even I was like, wow, that's brave. That takes taking a risk back then. Like we're way beyond that now. We've evolved. You know, the culture has evolved a lot just in the last 10 years.
Cool. So on Twitter, you finding mostly positive reactions to that article and this whole subject, or not?
In the bubble that I'm in, yeah, it's mostly positive. And why didn't he go further? is kind of the question that I hear. It's like, well, let's push it even further. Let's push the conversation even more. Let's talk about the story. Let's really talk about cultural deconstruction. But yeah, then there are those other feeds out there, MRA feeds.
And Matt, so you're coming to us from Toronto.
Yeah.
And is the reaction in Canada vastly different?
Probably not. Like, especially like in Toronto and like it's a bigger city, right? So people are more free and open, kind of to be who they are, how they are, and nobody really bothers or thinks twice about it. So, like, yeah, like it's not like out of the ordinary kind of deal, like like dudes wearing a dress or so on and so forth. But for somebody in like Pharrell's shoes, designer shoes per se, to like like really like pull it all out and like kind of like how he got to where he is now in his feeling about the masculinity and what it represents and the humility involved in his growth in becoming this person that he's always kind of been, but kind of like tiptoed around the fringes, and like now he's like fully engulfed in it. So it's like it's kind of like a different kind of scenario going on there.
Cool. And Anthony, did anything stand out to you on your read of this article?
No, I think Pharrell seems to approach things with a lot of spirituality. I think that was part of it, and I think it doesn't have to be, necessarily God or traditional Christianity or any other kind of organized religion. I think it's, you just approach it with life with just some sort of kind of awe and transcendence, and open-mindedness can be its own spirituality. I mean, I think it's, so it struck me, he seemed like a very kind of humble person, and very kind of open to just possibility. And I think that's just being open to the wonder and having like a wonder and an openness about what it means to be human, not just a man, but, I think the new masculinity is just to be a human. I think I've been beating that drum for a while. Like, I'm looking for a common ground. Like, I call it our highest common denominator is our humanity. And I think that, busting through and dropping these labels and just saying, just being who you are as a human being, as a engendered male. I mean, so I kind of clicked on that, kind of tapping into like the spirituality of, gender and how you are as a human being and a man. And, and I found it really inspiring in that way. Now, granted, it's from GQ, it's in GQ magazine, and he's wearing, they have the price tag of all the things he's wearing, like $1,000 sweater or something, and I'm just like, that's where my skepticism kind of comes in, as far as, and same thing with like the Gillette thing, when that was happening, it was like, okay, woke brands, so it comes with that skepticism, but I think he adds the genuineness to it, but it's GQ and they're peddling expensive menswear. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So
And it could be between the subject of an interview versus the corporate magazine structure. We can separate those.
Exactly. Working within the system to, defeat the system. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that stood out for me, his comment on humility being something you could learn, and recognizing he wasn't always that way, and the sense of evolving.
Right.
And I think the old standard of masculinity was just this solid, strict box. And perhaps the newness of it is just pushing that wider, making a bigger box, if that's still all you got. But no, I was just gonna say, I as a white guy whose college nickname was Metal, I cannot pretend to be a big Pharrell fan. I know his name. The only song I'm sure he's ever done is "Happy," which I think is the most played song for that 2-year stretch at least. But again, I appreciated this, learning more about his background and his involvement. But did any Al? Did you find anything when you finally read the article that you shared? When you did read it, was there anything that he said or presented that you kind of didn't agree with, didn't think was accurate or depicting of your mindset or anything like that?
Honestly, there wasn't a whole bunch that I didn't agree with. I mean, And that kind of surprised me as well. But what I did agree with was what stuck out to me, I should say the most, was when he said when he called the two words spiritual, well, one word, spiritual warfare. It's two words, sorry. When he talked about how do I put it? Just like my concept and my take on it is like, this whole in the box and in the way that a lot of us were taught how to be and whatnot. It is a warfare. And I would like to take it further and say it's not just like a spiritual warfare, it's a psychological warfare. I mean, because we're told so often you don't do this, you don't do that, you only do these things, and it's so limiting, right? But then when we do have that moment where it's like we're caught off guard or something, something happens that's super exciting or just really horrible, what's one of the go-to things that we can do that our body does is we expel liquid from our eyes, and then you're told like, oh no, you don't do that. That's not what a man does. It's like, well, then what am I supposed to do here? I'm a human being first and foremost before I'm like whatever gender label you want to put on me. So I need to be able to express these things and be fully who I am. And that really is the overall of what I got out of that, more than like the clothing and stuff. And yes, I thought about it too, and I was like, well, first and foremost, they are like a style and fashion rag, so they're gonna put that out there. But I did connect also with that too, because myself as a man, I have, and as an artist, because I do not a lot now, but I have done visual art and things like that, and my degree is in art. But for myself and how I want to present myself to the world, I see that as a form of art as well. And whether it's like a uniform that I just pick, so to speak, for myself, where I wear like the same common things every day because it makes it easier for me, say, to think about other things, and the last thing I want to think about is what I'm going to put on in the morning, or it's just how I want to express myself at any given time. I started finding that the choices that I had, whether it was just financially or just because I'm looking in these stores that are catered towards my gender, were limiting. They were limiting in color, they were limiting in just style and all kinds of things. So for me, like I started with my socks, literally until I could find ones anywhere and everywhere I went, would dye my own socks, my favorite color, which is orange. And I just started with that. I wear orange socks every single day. They're either orange or they have orange in them. And then I just started going out from there, and deciding, okay, well, these are the type of pants I want to wear, and this is the type of shirt I want to wear. Now I'm starting to branch out even more, because as I'm expanding and evolving in that, I'm finding that, well, I do like a lot more things. And you know what? I'm getting to the point at 46 years old, I don't really give a flying whatever about what someone else has to say about my clothing options anymore. So that was, an aside thing, but it still stuck out to me because that's a part of the evolving process for myself. How do I want to present myself? How do I want to be seen? And do I really care if I fit in some box or label or whatever that someone places upon me that says, well, as a Black person and a man, you should do this, or just as a man in general, you should do that, or whatever. No, I don't care about those things anymore, because first and foremost, I'm a human being. So I hope that answered your question.
Beautiful. And, we've all kind of talked about that new masculinity isn't so new, and it keeps being recycled and maybe spreading more and more. But I think I plucked out of it how Pharrell defined new masculinity, and it was having the willingness to just be, which is kind of what a number of you have been saying. Just live and let live. I mean, how fucking insecure must you be as a human being that because you are uncomfortable with doing something, somebody else shouldn't be able to do that? I don't accept that. That's unacceptable to me. So that seemed to be, so Matt, what do you think about that? How did that feel to you? Or did you resonate with it at all?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's so important to like feel comfortable for yourself and not worry about what other people have to say, what they think. Like regardless, like name callings or whatever, like you need to have that like first and foremost self-love, self-respect for yourself. And with that will grow that willingness to show yourself to everybody without fear of judgment or anything along those lines. And you know, that's what kind of like Pharrell did. As soon as he came on the music scene, he came out looking totally different than everybody else in the rap or hip hop genre, and he's evolved from that. Where everybody else is wearing baggy clothes, basketball jersey, this, that, whatever, he comes out in like skinny jeans and like fitted t-shirts and, you know, like a mesh trucker hat, which completely blew my mind back in the day. Like this is like my music, right? So like who is this guy? Why is he dressed like that? It doesn't make sense. But the music was good and everything he produced was good, and everybody just kind of like, it just started to all meld together. So if you look at hip hop nowadays, there's a bunch of like guys that are like on that like spectrum of dressing like, you know, out of like left field, something completely different than the standard issue hip hop kind of get up and go. So like it's so important. That just shows the self comfort and self like knowledge in self that like, this is me, this is who I represent, and this is how I look, this is how I dress, this is how I feel. And that's awesome. And like, I'm glad that like other people have kind of like joined onto that, whether they've done it for sheer like shock value to push their careers forward, this, that, whatever, or that's just genuinely who they are and that's how they feel best. And hopefully it is that's who they are and that's how they feel best. And that's great for them. It's great for other people within like the industry, like the younger generation, to see these people they might look up to or idolize, have posters on their wall. And it's not just that stereotypical like hard ass male role model, like kind of action figure kind of guy, right?
Right. So is traditional masculinity, is that more doing things to get other people to think you're masculine, whereas new masculinity is more about what you think about yourself?
Yeah.
Nice. Good
Definitely.
discussion.
I like that.
That just hit me tonight. That's a note I just wrote, like while hearing it from you. So, yeah.
No,
All right,
definitely.
we fixed
That
everything.
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of positive psychology terms, there's extrinsic motivation and
right.
intrinsic motivation.
Right.
And anything that's extrinsically motivated is recognition, wealth, fame, things like that. Those are over the long term not sustainable and self-destructive. You know, they're this rat race, this hedonic treadmill where you're constantly you're always going to be competing and there's no rest. And if you never get a chance to rest and recoup, you know, so if you have these external motivations and you're proving yourself as a man all the time or whatever those in life, anything that's externally motivated is not healthy in the long term. So any intrinsic motivations of you as an individual are always better than trying to pursue the, you know, the straight and narrow of any ideology you're following, you know. So any ideology that you're following that has any kind of exclusivity and any kind of bar that you have to jump over all the time is exhausting emotionally, mentally, physically as a result. And it's no wonder men are irritable, you know, if we have to meet that external extrinsic bar all the time. So absolutely, just from what research is showing us in positive psychology and the science of well-being now. So, yeah.
And boys, and with your role in the Mankind Project, I imagine you're seeing more men interacting with them on a daily basis than we all are. So are you seeing, you know, our regular guys identifying with traditional masculinity, new masculinity, you using any of these terms, or is it still kind of just the fringe people?
I think it's still, we're in rarefied air when we're even having the conversation, because most guys out there, it's just the grind, right? It's what am I doing to get by? And, you know, the first thing that popped out at me in the Pharrell article was he saw something and he thought that would look good on me. And like, even that is a level of consciousness way beyond where a lot of us are operating, right? It's just like, okay, what's the uniform that I'm expected to wear here? Whether that's a Flyers t-shirt or whether that's, you know, my logo gear or whatever it is, kind of what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to look like? And let me fit into that. But that intrinsic motivation, I think that was really on point. Anthony, and then add to it what Al was saying about the kind of spiritual. So now let's take intrinsic motivation gone awry, which is addiction, or intrinsic motivation gone pure, which is like spirituality. So it's like, okay, now I have intrinsic motivation and I can step outside of myself long enough to see, oh, is this kind of what I actually want? I had a whole bunch of stuff popping up. The price tag conversation too. Like the other thing, it's GQ, it's commodity. This is all commodity. And just like the Ellen DeGeneres and George H.W. Bush conversation, like class solidarity. It's like Pharrell Williams for real does not need to give a fuck about what anybody else thinks about it. Like not one.
Yeah. And I think in the article you mentioned that, he gets to use, he's lucky and he's glad he gets to use his influence that he has to inform the conversation. Just like Terry Crews has done, with what he went through and through, what his experience has been with being abused and, his experience with toxic masculinity being used against him and him being taken advantage of. So it's people, I'm all for people using their, and even companies using their privilege to get messages out. It's just that, I think I'm just skeptical by nature, when it's if they're making money and they're staying in publication and wherever you can pick up a copy of it, physically, electronically, if they're staying in publication and because of that, and they get to share a message that I think is beneficial, that I think we all are talking about here, then go for it, But it's I have a bad relationship with capitalism lately, so that's my skepticism is showing.
You mentioned Terry
Does
Crews.
everybody have a good relationship with capitalism? I'm just like curious about
Sure, there's 1% that has a very good
right.
But you mentioned Terry Crews and we're talking about Pharrell, and it just struck me now, are more African Americans willing to break masculine stereotypes? Or is it just happen to be these two people?
I cannot say that definitively I have an answer for you on that, but what I can say is that at least fashion-wise, fashion forward,
that's true.
In my experience, I've seen that the African-American community tends to be a little bit more on the forefront or the leading edge with those things. Just especially in regards to, say, color and color choices and wearing like bold patterns and things like that. I mean, that is inspiring to me, and that is, I think, a part of our culture in general. You see that in our churches. You go to church and for everybody, the pastor to the choir to the little boy, sitting next to his grandmama, they got all the colors on, they're popping, everything's to the T. It's just a thing that we do. So, yeah, but going back, now I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. Going back to something that Anthony was saying. Oh, jeez. I'll come back because I'll remember it later.
Okay. I took some of the questions that Pharrell was asked, and I thought I would ask some of you guys some of those questions. And if I happen to ask you and pick you, and you just no idea, you just pass. But so Matt, who were your male role models growing up?
Like male role models. I really couldn't tell you like a role model, like someone that like I aspired to be like. There was always like athletes that were favorite athletes, favorite music artists that you try to dress to emulate their style, so on and so forth. As a role model, someone that I wanted to walk in their footsteps and be just like them. There really was nobody. But like I said, like there's people that you liked their character and followed their music and so on and so forth. Like, so, I'm 36 now. So like back it was like 90, like early 90s. So we had like Notorious B.I.G. and a Wu-Tang, and like that's who like we wanted to be. Like obviously they're not role models because it's not something to like really model yourself after, other than fashion wise, like the way you talk, language, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, just stuff like that. So, you know, you go out and they get your mom to buy you like the baggiest of baggiest clothes and stuff like that. And so you try to emulate this look and emulate this character that they have given the world, and everybody just wants to be there. It kind of ends up being like, you know, like cookie cutter, because every other kid your age is in the same boat, wants to be these people.
Right. You hang with a crowd that has the same role models, and you're all emulating, and seems like that's
but at the end of the day, like, you know, like these like other friends might have like, you know, positive figures in their lives that they actually want to be like whoever, right? And like, you know what, I dress this way and I hang out with my buddies this way, and but like I actually have something else that's bigger than this, that I want to follow those footsteps. I really didn't have that. I just kind of, you know, like went along with my friends. We did, you know, hood rat shit with our friends and got into trouble, this, that, whatever, and had fun. But like, yeah, there was nothing like, you know, like solid like role model. Like, I just want to be like that guy when I'm older, and that's okay. Like, because now I can be that role model for my kids, and maybe other people's kids, to see me and who I am, where I'm going.
And did anyone else that growing up, did any of you consciously have a role model that was, Al, go.
Yeah, my big brother from Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I actually talked to him as recently as 2 years ago. So, and I met him when I was like 8 years old. He was definitely my role model. And it wasn't because he was like super smart or intellectual or anything like that. It was just because he spent time with me and he was always real with me. I mean, no, I never saw him cry, but I did see him, you know, get sad and be upset. I saw like a pretty good range of like his emotions and just how he handled things. You know, he had a girlfriend at the time when I knew him and everything, and I got to witness some, you know, of them just being together and being, you know, boyfriend and girlfriend and all that. But it's mainly because he took time and talked to me and he was real with me. And I'd ask him a question and he'd answer me honestly. You know, and he never said to me, "Oh, don't tell your mom I said this." No, he just like, "Listen, this is what happens," and blah blah blah, whatever. And that's just how him impressed me enough that when I have my own sons, I literally just like, okay, I'm gonna lay it out, and it's just gonna be real. This is life, and this is how it happens. Of course, every year it was age appropriate as what they could handle, but I didn't hide things from them, and I didn't lie to them about things, and they appreciate it too. But I have to say, I got that from Henry, my big brother.
Cool. Boys and Anthony, any role models for you growing up?
Yeah, for me it was, not to be too blunt, but it was any male adult that didn't treat me like crap. I mean, you know, I know that sounds like any port in a storm, but I mean, there were a few in particular. There was a, you know, high school English teacher, shout out to Mr. Scribonia, who was, you know, basically who supported my, you know, when my father was saying that my artistic side was basically evidence that I was, you know, a homo, and that's the worst thing you could be for a macho Italian dad right off the boat from Italy. So, you know, there was a father figure there in Mr. Scribonia, who taught me that not only was my talent, you know, totally normal, it was a good thing and I should pursue it, you know. And then there was the high school principal who believed in me. There were, you know, guidance counselors. So it was men who showed me sympathy, empathy, you know, didn't raise their hand to me and just treat me by default as a piece of crap. So, I mean, it was a low bar, but they raised the bar, you know. So I came to them with no expectations of adult men and authority figures and father figures. But then they took that and raised it and raised me effectively. So it was, you know, there was the examples of, you know, that just taught me that, you know, sometimes people think I have a sort of a disdain for family and for blood, because I had none really growing up. I had no family connections. My parents didn't really fuse those into me or my siblings, but it just really solidified for me that you need to make your own family, your own friends and family. Your friends and your father figures, you can have multiple father figures and they become your family along with your friends, and you build that on your own. You find that, create that, just like your own meaning in life. So yeah, that's really it for me.
Cool. And Boysen, were you in a men's group at age 8, or what was it for you?
No, I'm here to keep it real with y'all. I can list the teachers and Mr. Hoos, Mr. Hinkhouse, Mr. MacArthur, like, yeah, all good dudes, but no, fuck that. I was into being as opaque and as hidden as I could possibly be. So like the role models for me ended up being like some of the like most typical, stereotypical males of the day, like Christian Slater, fucking Don Johnson on Miami Vice. You know, when I was real little, Rick Schroeder, like these characters who's like, oh, they've got it all together. They're rich, they're good looking, they don't have anything to worry about. I want to be like that. I'm going to emulate that so that I don't feel pain, so that I don't experience the existential like terror that I constantly feel right now, right? So I'm going to pretend to be that. And I think, and you know, there, but for the grace of God, right? I kind of got out of that because it hurt enough. But still, that's where I, you know, when I'm unconscious, that's where I slip back to, is I want to put the mask back on. I don't want to be real. I don't want to be authentic. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to take risks around this stuff. Like that's, yeah. I mean,
Cool. Thanks. Let's the Pharrell interview, the interview with Pharrell went into some politics, and I already know where we all are, but I'll go there anyway because this is a kind of different take on it. So he said he wished the synonym for American was humane, and that it's currently not. So, what do you wish the synonym for American was, and what do you think it currently is? Anyone want to start with that?
third rail. That is a third rail right there.
I think synonym for American is fearful, a scared naked ape. I don't know what it is. Scared naked primate. I don't know. We're just too wrapped up in our fear and we're clinging to the fake external certainty of ideology.
Ooh.
And no bigger example than our president.
Right. So do you believe have you always felt this way, or is this recently? Like when you were a kid, did you think American meant fearful and being an ape?
I mean, when I was a kid, I liked Ronald Reagan just because he was on TV and he was an actor, and I didn't know any better, So, I mean, and, they had the puppets of all the politicians, and I thought they were funny, like that. So, but I think I've evolved more recently into just, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just getting like, part of me didn't want to come on tonight because, oh my God, here we go. We got to defend real men feel again. We have to defend a fluid, upbeat, positive form of masculinity that can be whatever you want it to be. Here we go. We got to fight this fight. But it's so important that all of us here do this, and people who feel like, and men like who feel like us are. And I feel like we're fighting this fight, and just, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the arc of history tends towards justice, but it takes a long time because there's so many people full of fear. There's so many men full of fear. And that's why masculinity is changing slowly, but surely, and broadening. It's just, it's so slow. But I mean, I came on tonight because we have to keep fighting this fight. And, but I mean, but having a president like we do, I mean, who's just reinforcing the stereotype of like the big, brash, loud, scary guy who's like, Mr. Tough Guy.
So what do you wish the synonym was, but besides presidential funny puppets or something like that?
Yes, please keep me focused. What do I wish the synonym is? Synonym. Man, I'm having a hard time talking tonight.
It can be cinnamon.
I wish it was just, really free. I don't think we're free. I think we need to be really free.
Cool.
We're fake free right now.
All right. And Matt, I wonder if you, from looking down on at your southern border, what do you see that American means today?
Oh man, like looking from the outside in down there, like I can see that it's like some kind of a mess. But whenever I go there, like I meet like the best people. I think when we initially talked, like whenever you come to Canada, it's like meeting the nicest American ever.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
actually, whenever I go down there, like everybody's like super nice to me when I'm there. Like, you know, they're courteous, respectful, and like everybody says everybody's all grumpy and stuff down here, but it's really not like that. So like, you know, people, you know, there's tough times, there's, you know, poverty, especially like in like, you know, the bigger cities and stuff like that. But like everybody to me seems like super chill, super cool, very friendly and open, willing to like share more than I would expect. Like, you know, share things.
But you still said it's a mess. So where's the mess come in then?
That mess, I guess, like, you know, y'all are good at like putting that mess behind you and like putting on like a happy face for the outside world to see. And when, you know, people go home to wherever they're going home to, if they have a home, is a different scenario. And that's something they have to deal with, you know, whether they're going to have like food or be able to pay rent, if they're going to have a job or whatever the case may be. But, you know, like as like a country in general, as a whole, the people that I've come in contact with are very loving, nurturing people. And I guess that's kind of, you know, what the foundation was kind of built on, like that kind of people. But the people higher than them have kind of like, you know, cast this shadow upon them where they're constantly trying to dodge this shadow, get into the sunlight and like have like a good life. And it's like a constant struggle for you guys down there. Like I see it depending on, you know, where you're from, like what your racial background is, so on and so forth. But yeah, like especially that guy that's in charge of your country is a whole other scenario. I don't know how he's still there. I don't know how American politics works. But I guess you just can't like overthrow people by force. It doesn't work that way anymore, I guess. But yeah, you know, like you guys do with what you guys have the best you guys can. And I think as a country, you guys do a really good job at doing that. With like, you know, like I said, like the poverty, unemployment rates, just like, you know, complete cities that like barely exist other than like the people that are stuck there essentially. You go down through Detroit and like it looks like, you know, somewhere in the Middle East. But still you'll meet people there and they're friendly and upbeat and willing to help you and stuff like that. And it's not like, you know, you expect something completely different when you go through a place like that that's so beat down, wore out, and been through so much. But to find like these people that are like living their lives to the fullest they possibly can with what they have, that's pretty spectacular. And you know, like to me, like that, the synonym for American should be love, and everybody should just love one another. Like love thy neighbor, and do unto others as you want done unto yourself. And like that's, you know, like kind of like the basis of everything. And I think aside from politics and all these other things, it's in there in everybody. And maybe one day, you know, that whole, all the ingredients will come together and everybody will be able to like live harmoniously and not have to deal with all the other bullshit that's involved in it.
Cool, thanks. Boysen, you want to touch the third rail?
No, I want Al to go first.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I would say for me that we're messy. We're definitely messy. And that perspective for me comes from living in another totally different country for 2 years. I lived in Japan for 2 years, and that's and I'm much gratitude. I mean, I was in the military, and that's how I was able to do that, because I honestly don't think I would have been able to do that any other way at that time. But yeah, we're just messy. We got so much going on, and so much that we don't want to deal with that should be dealt with, because we just people are afraid to, one, just own their own shit, and then two, I mean, sometimes I'm this way, more so not now, but we just want to put things off and not take responsibility for it and just say, you know what, just let that sit in the corner there, but then it starts to fester and smell and mold and rot, and then by the time you go back to look at it, you're like, what the hell am I dealing with? So yeah, we're just way too messy. What I wish we were is truly free, truly non-judgmental, not judgmental, and authentic. So there's a lot of people that way. I can't say that everywhere is not. I've traveled this country. I've been in just about every state, whether it was with 4 wheels or with 18. And I've met a lot of different people all over the country from all kinds of backgrounds, and so that keeps me going with faith in this country to say, you know what, we're not all bad people. We're not all, the ignorant blowhards that we see on the squawky box. But yeah, just authentic and free is what I wish it was,
Cool.
as opposed to messy.
Thanks. Boysen?
Nice. Well, thank you, Al. That was great. I think we're asleep, is what I think. I think that, that's that same avoidance. So, I'll take full ownership of that. The amount of reality that I want to put away, and Al was talking about, is over in the corner, put it away down there. I wish that synonymous with America was awake to reality, awake to, looking at what's actually, what's real, what's happening. And, good news is I think that there are a lot of us who are struggling waking up. And I think the people that I think there are lots of people that, might regard me as their enemy, who it's the same struggle. They're struggling to wake up. And Michael Kimmel talks about aggrieved entitlement. Like we've lived with such a sense of superiority and such a sense of entitlement for so long that the threats to that, the threats to our certainty, the threats to all of these things are shaking all of us into trying to wake up. And yeah, we're beautiful. We are beautiful, kind, loving people all over this country, and all from all of our backgrounds as individuals. It's the old trope about religion. I love Jesus. His followers are just a pain in the ass, though, right? Like that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Putting it mildly, Boysen.
Yeah.
That's great. I have not heard that one.
Americans are friendly. I mean, and we are friendly. We are open. We are warm. We're just buried under this gang mentality of division right now that it just has this upswell, but it's going to swing back. And it's conversations and groups like this, like Real Men Feel and Mankind Project, that are going to swing it back. But it's just, we have to fight the good fight, like I said earlier. We just have to keep pushing. Those of us who are awake,
And you said that, and Anthony, what you said earlier about, I didn't want to come on the show and I have to fight. And does being here, just talking like this among like-minded men, feel like a fight?
No, I mean, this is a relief.
Okay.
This is a relief, but it's just what I meant by that was it's I guess maybe because you and I experienced like a lot of the troll attacks when I got into the MGTOW stuff a little while ago, and it's just it doesn't make me angry. It just makes me sad and exhausted to think about the people who are just clinging to the ideology of this old-fashioned, antiquated, tough guy machismo, walking this thin little tightrope of machismo, and how miserable and narrow and small their lives are. And it makes me sad, angry, depressed, exhausted, like all at once. And it's just like talking to you guys is catharsis, and it refuels me. but it's like I get exhausted thinking about repercussions and reactions of like the trolls, you know, and I guess you can't think like that, but it's like, that's why I feel like, no, I have to go on. I have to talk to all of you guys, all of you like-minded kindred spirits, because otherwise, you know, it's just, I'm just going to get broken down. So that's just to clear up what I was saying. But I mean,
Okay,
yeah, it's,
gotcha.
to talk to you guys is not exhausting. It's re-energizing, but
Okay,
you know,
because
just the thought of like people, trolls reacting and wading into that again, I think I might have post-traumatic stress syndrome from that, man. Seriously.
and so do you other guys? Do you feel like that by your willingness to have a new masculinity, to redefine, to ignore the traditions that don't feel good, does that feel like you're in a fight with other men over that, or society? Does that resonate? Yeah, Al does.
Yeah, well, I have to. Well, it's not that I have to. I'm kind of like, I feel like I step into the fray almost every day when I go to work. Um, I work in a very dominated industry, or, you know, technically it's retail, but it's, you know, cars and luxury vehicles. And so, and I work in the parts department, which is right next to service, which is mostly men that are full of bravado and machismo and all that stuff. And I have a unique role in what I do because I get to walk around all parts of that dealership and I just watch sometimes. And I'm just amazed. Like, I interact with just about everybody. And some of these guys are some of the kindest, you know, most gentlest, awesome men that you could meet, you know. But then I see that at times they have to put on these masks, you know, to deal with their contemporaries. And you know, I just, it amazes me and boggles my mind all at the same time, you know. And I don't ever put on a mask at work. I am who I am, period. And you know, when they're talking about their families and spouses and all that stuff, and you know, that are opposite gender, I'm talking about whoever it is I'm dating at the time, you know. And it's typically someone of the same gender because that's what my proclivity is. But you know, and I don't bat an eye, I don't shy away from it, I don't back down, you know, even in the face of what might be, oh well, that's not a man. But I can feel, even though they don't come out and say it to me, I can feel that they respect me for it because I stand my ground. And I say, this is who I am. You accept me or you don't. I'm going to do my job no matter what. And I'm going to, you know, I hope that you do the same. And we can find common ground in what we do together and still be men, regardless of what your ideal is or my ideal is. We're just who we are, human beings. And that's the way I try to approach everybody in that regard. So I see it. I think I thought about this a lot, and I was like, wow, this environment, if I let it, could be so toxic to me. You know, I could literally not enjoy my job. I could literally dread and hate coming to work. But I don't. I actually love going to work, and I actually love interacting with a lot of my coworkers every single day, regardless of what my judgments may be about many of them.
Cool. So Matt, I know that you guys have similar jobs. Is that why you were reacting to
Sounds
that?
like it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it. Yeah, like I'm in parts in a car dealership and surrounded by mostly men all day, every day. But I guess luckily enough, the tides have started to shift. Like the older guys are on their way out, and it's a bunch of younger guys as technicians coming up that don't have that same macho mentality as the older guys may have had back in the days, where it was, man strong, man fixed car, and like a woman comes in, they try to like take her for everything because she doesn't know any better. We're also lucky that we have female service advisors, which I know definitely helps the female client base when they come in, not to feel that kind of like pressure they might have had before with male advisors, where like they may talk down to them, trying to explain stuff to them. The women are more open and free and be able to communicate better, more effectively, but be more effective communicators. And in that, we kind of have like a good mix of like everything going on in the dealership, with between like male, female, different cultures, religions, so on and so forth. It's kind of like a real melting pot kind of deal going on we have, which is nice. So everybody kind of gets along, and everybody is pretty open and honest. It's like I've been there for 10 years now, and it's kind of been like, you know, like, they see them more than my family most of the time, right? So like you got to learn to get along with these people that you're with 8, 10, 12 hours a day sometimes. And yeah, so like I said, like the younger kids that are coming up, bring a little bit of light with them, with this, you know, the non-toxic masculinity that the older guys may have had. There's a couple still lingering around that are, you know, like gripped on tight on that macho man mentality. And you know what, like, okay. But at the end of the day, they're not like bad people, but you know, they're not the warmest a lot of the time. But if you know how to interact with them, you can get by, and they'll respect you, and you can have a level of respect for them at the same time.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm in any sort of fight. I've just like agreed to be open and authentic, as Al was saying. And it's a relief to just be yourself and not care what anyone else thinks. But the only times I do feel like it's time to fight is like experiences that Anthony referred to when expressing my view, being open, being vulnerable, makes someone else come back at me and start with the name calling and coming at me wanting to pick a fight. And often when I was editing at the Good Man Project, it was Good Men Project. It was I was called the feminazi, like, weekly. And Anthony, you were called that and thousands of things worse. But so, have we been duped? Have we all been tricked by the evil feminine to soften up, to have emotions? Boys, I hope this is kind of what you were referring to.
That's awesome. Have we all been duped? What's the story? That's the question that always comes up for me around this, is like, what's the story we tell about masculinity? What's the story we tell about what it means to be a man, and what do we believe culturally, and what's the worst thing that could happen beyond here there be dragons, right? That's the old fear. And you're, Matt, talking about some of the older guys, like that's who I grew up with. Right? Those are all the guys that I grew up with, where I don't know what the existential threat, what they think is going to happen if they go outside those lines, right? But troll under the bridge, like, lightning from God, like whatever is going to happen. But I think that the culture is telling a new story these days about masculinity that is much more inclusive and much more equitable and much more healthy, and starts giving us back as men access to a lot of the things we were told we're not supposed to have. And I think that's great. And I don't see that as, Anthony, it's the humanization. It's not feminization. It's like, I can fucking be human and claim all that now, and so can you. And let's tell that story until the opposite of that becomes like, wait, you still believe that? Like, why? What's that getting you?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to close the box of Matt, because way back, like, Greek warriors and the 300 and all these, strongest, powerful, most masculine men on the planet would openly weep and grieve and feel sorrow and miss their wives and mourn the loss of their brothers.
And wrestle naked and yeah.
And with anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So the notion of a well-rounded man was very different then.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, why can't we borrow aspects from all different types and strengths, and borrow from all the strengths of being human, whether you're male or female? I mean, I've had a problem for a long time with how we've just taken and run with concepts of masculine and feminine. Sure, I think, there is something biological to say that maybe women are, just from their childbearing capabilities. Maybe, sure, they have a biological connection to nurturing, but one thing doesn't exclude the other. Men can be nurturing too. You don't have to have a uterus and ovaries, just to be nurturing and be kind. And the funny thing is, it's the feminists are not reinforcing male stereotypes. It's other men are policing other men. With the macho police are everywhere. So they're the ones, and a lot of the problems that men have are self-inflicted by other men. So within our sex. So it's that whole scapegoating of, it's women in whatever way feminists. It's ridiculous. It's hogwash. So yeah, I just wish that we would recognize that we're shooting ourselves in the foot, but yeah, we'll get it eventually.
I really appreciate what you just said, Anthony, but I'm going to have to disagree with some of that, because I have found that, at least in my experience, it's more women that are saying, be a man, act like a man, this is what a man does, blah, 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 and putting out those messages. And then the men pick it up, or, they're just reinforcing, or vice versa, women are reinforcing what men are saying. That's what's been in my experience. Well, a man does this, a man does the other, that's a man's work, and things like that. It was women that were the key people that were saying those things to me in my life and what I've seen. And that's the hardest thing sometimes that was for me to swallow, because it's like, then I hear out of their mouths men are bad in these ways, but you just told me I needed to be this way, and now you're saying that it's bad to be that way. So what is it that you really want?
I mean, yeah.
I don't get it.
Personal experience, from my personal experience, it was the opposite. So, yeah, it depends on context of your
Culture,
community, and your environment. So, yeah, I know that there's women out there who are beating the drum of, traditional machismo masculinity, for sure. But it's not just women, it's
that I do agree with.
Yeah, it's totally, yeah, I agree with you.
and so then just see it. So let's separate men and women out of that completely, and say that there is a cultural system in place that does this, right? Mm-hmm. That reinforces, so that we don't have to lay blame on any group of people. We just have to see, wow, look how well this fucking computer is programmed to produce this outcome. And what do we need to do to change that programming to produce different outcomes?
Yeah, and the programming, though, if society is the computer, it's human subconscious just habit. It's when we just blindly go about life that we perpetuate the bad programming. So human beings perpetuate the bad programming. So but when we're living subconsciously and perpetuating the stereotypes and the ideologies that are sick, we're the transmitters, and we're the ones that keep the wheels grinding and that we get ground under. So it's a systemic thing for sure. And the way we change the system is for the programs to wake up and to change their programming. So, and we're all the programs, just like in Tron. I don't know if everybody remembers Tron, but we're all the programs, and we need to change the programming. That's it. Yeah.
Cool. And can we?
We are.
Yes, we are. But
most definitely.
Cool. People want to protect the Matrix, but we have to wake them up. So
cool. There was one last thing to bring this just back to the GQ article, and the entire magazine's about new masculinity. So if you can find it, check it out. And online there are more articles, and there's a really interesting. There's a quiz. There's a survey, rather, not a quiz. There's a survey of over 1,000 Americans asking about different things about masculinity. It's kind of interesting to read, and I'll put a link to that in the notes about this show. But the editor, Will Welch, said the new masculinity issue is an exploration of the ways that traditional notions of masculinity are being challenged, overturned, and evolved. And all of you guys are part of that challenging, overturning, and evolving. And I speak for myself, there was definitely a time in my life that I was afraid of anything I was doing being challenged, overturned, or evolving. So I can really see it on both sides. And, I don't know, for me, fight feels like it's just stronger than my experience is of it. But, because it's almost like if you go into the fight, then now it's a fight and you make kind of what you're fighting over becomes stronger. But I don't know. So, I hope that morphs for you. Anyone that's feeling like it is a fight to be themselves and go out there. I hope that eases. That's what I hope. Man, maybe I want the American synonym to be ease. But I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you all for sharing from yourselves, and I want to give everyone a chance if there's anything you want to say to wrap up. I won't call it a final thought because you'll have many more thoughts, but the final thought you'll share for this program. Who wants to jump in? Oh, hold on. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for having this panel discussion to go over all these, like things that are involved in becoming, whole human beings. And I just want to, let everybody know, just be yourself, be happy with yourself. And if you're happy with yourself, everybody else is going to be happy with you. And if they're not happy with you, they're not happy with themselves. So, just live your life the way you see it fit and enjoy it.
Awesome. Now that fits with every Canadian I've ever met. That feels like a national motto to me. Awesome. Thank you. Al, you feeling anything?
Yeah. I guess a closing thought. Yeah, I have to just say ditto on everything that Matt just said. I can't go better than that. So yeah, thanks for that, brother. And I agree.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Anthony?
I think I'm just going to go back to what Boysen said and just say, leave it at wake up. The sleeper must awaken, as they say in one of my favorite novels, Dune. Science fiction can teach us a lot, and I think it's underrated, especially the classics. But, what he said in that novel, one of the characters, the sleeper must awaken. And that's exactly what Boysen said, and I leave it with that. Wake up.
All right. Now, Boysen, you can't close with that.
Yeah, every day, keep waking up. Gabor Mate, look him up. In his most recent book talking about addiction, he says that the human genetic code, the DNA, is nowhere near complicated enough to program the richness of who we are. So look to culture, because it's the interaction between the environment and our DNA that creates all that we are. So my thing is like, what's your story about masculinity, femininity? What's your story about freedom, not freedom? What's your story? And love is a verb, right? It ain't a feeling, it's an action. So yeah, love.
Coolness. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate all you guys, what I see you doing in your lives, with your friends, with your family, your willingness to come out here, share yourselves, be open, be authentic, your vulnerability. It's my deepest hope that you all are role models to people that you never meet, right? That your words, your actions just carry on, and the ripple effect of you guys being you guys is just never ending. So thanks for being here. Everyone, thanks for listening or watching. Whatever your sense of choice when dealing with Real Men Feel, wherever you're finding us, please give a share, a like, subscribe, share it to someone else, put someone in contact. Write to me, tell us your story, come be a guest, recommend someone. But overall, be good to yourself. Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Reach out to us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com. Until next time, visit realmenfeel.org or the Real Men Feel Facebook group and share what you thought of this episode. Please give this podcast a review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel.